That's it? Margaret raised a perfectly arched brow, one hand still wrapped around her coffee cup. Because I didn't review your resume? Robert didn't answer right away. He just stared at the chipped edge of the table between them, the sun casting fractured shadows through the cafe window. Yeah, he said finally, quiet but firm. That's it. A breath of silence passed. Margaret gave a light laugh, more amused than hurt. God, Robert, after all these years, you're still that petty? He didn't flinch. Petty enough to leave. She leaned back into the velvet seat, eyes tracing his face, her lips curled, not quite a smile. All right then, breakup number, what, 12? She tapped the ceramic rim of her mug. Let me know when it ends this time, too. But Robert didn't react. No smirk, no sigh, no sarcastic reply like before, just a hollow stillness in his eyes. That's when Margaret's fingers twitched slightly. Her voice softened. Wait, you're serious? I already signed the offer, he said. They need me in North City next month. The words floated in the air between them like ash. Her smile faltered, only a crack. But you told me you were staying. You turned down every out-of-city offer. I turned them down because I still thought. Robert looked away. That maybe we had something worth staying for. She didn't say anything. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the old fountain pen she'd gifted him on their anniversary. The nib was bent, the cap cracked open. Found this on the floor this morning. He turned it once in his fingers, then laid it on the table gently. Funny how things break quietly. Margaret's lips parted like she might say something, might ask him to stay, might tell him it wasn't that deep, but nothing came. Instead, her phone buzzed. She flipped it over, read the message, laughed lightly to herself. Well, look at that, she murmured. Daniel? Needs help with his interview prep again. Big surprise. Robert's gaze turned sharp for a second, but he said nothing, just stood up slowly, took his coat, and walked toward the door. I won't regret it, he said without turning. Margaret's voice followed him. Neither will I. The bell over the cafe door jingled as he pushed it open. And that's when he bumped into someone. Oh, sorry. Daniel stood blinking in the afternoon light, a slim folder tucked under his arm. Margaret, hey, that final interview from TOA Capital just confirmed. I'm still super nervous. Could you maybe help me run through the negotiation strategy again? Robert paused. Margaret looked up, eyes darting between the two men, then she smiled at Daniel and nodded. Of course, give me a minute. Robert didn't wait to hear the rest. He stepped out into the street, sunlight sharp in his eyes, and for the first time in years, didn't look back. When Robert was 7, the world stopped making sense. One morning he woke up to his uncle at the foot of the bed, holding his small shoulders, voice dry and low. There'd been an accident on the highway, his parents wouldn't be coming back. People came and went in black. Distant relatives whispered words like tragedy and orphan. That same week, at the funeral, Robert stood silent and still, not crying, just watching the urn with wide, unblinking eyes. Everyone kept a respectful distance, everyone except one girl. Margaret. She marched up the aisle with 2 scrapes on her knees, her dress wrinkled, a half-braided ponytail bouncing behind her. She didn't offer empty words or reach for his hand. Instead, she shoved a crumpled napkin into his pocket and said, "If you cry later, use this. Don't wipe it on your sleeve like last time. Your mom hated that." Then she stood beside him, just stood there, like a soldier on post. That was the first time someone refused to treat him like a fragile thing. Later, when Robert tried sneaking out of his uncle's house late at night, half a mind to disappear into the cold rain, thinking maybe the world would rewind if he vanished, Margaret showed up, holding a half-broken umbrella and dragging a soggy backpack. "Where are you going?" "I don't know." "Well, I'm coming too." "You can't. You're not the boss of me." She followed him all the way to the park where they used to feed stray cats. She didn't say much, just plopped beside him in the wet grass and pulled out 2 peanut butter sandwiches. "You're not alone," she said after they'd eaten in silence. "Not while I'm around." From then on, she was everywhere. At school, she punched a kid twice her size for calling him that cursed boy. In middle school, she refused to go on a field trip because Robert wasn't allowed to join due to late registration. "If he's not going, I'm not going either," she told the teacher without blinking. In high school, when a guidance counselor suggested Robert skip applying to top universities due to emotional instability, Margaret sat in the office with him and tore the pamphlet in half. "He's not unstable," she said coldly. "He's brilliant, you're just blind." For a long time, she was his tether, his shield, his place to breathe. They didn't label anything for years. Not until senior year, when she kissed him under the bleachers during a downpour after their graduation ceremony. "This isn't a confession," she whispered. "It's a promise, I'm not going anywhere." He believed her. And for a while, that promise held, through university entrance exams, through his panic attacks, through long nights studying side by side. They even talked about starting a consulting firm one day, just the two of them. Margaret drew up a sketch of the logo. Robert saved it in his wallet, but then came Daniel. He arrived quietly, just another name on the graduate student roster, the son of Mr. Lee, the Liu family's longtime driver. His mother was sick, he'd grown up in a small town, and his voice always trembled when he talked. "Sorry," he'd say with a shy smile. "I probably sound dumb." Margaret, always kind, always protective, took to him instantly. "He reminds me of you," she told Robert one night, eyes soft. "Back when you didn't talk much and hated people looking at you." At first, Robert didn't think much of it. Daniel would appear occasionally, asking for thesis advice, recommendations, help with course registration, but then, occasionally, turned to frequently, and frequently became always. Robert would come by Margaret's apartment only to find Daniel already there, sipping tea, asking if his tie looked too bold for an internship interview. He noticed how Margaret smiled at him with that patient warmth, how she took the time to rewrite his resumes, rehearse his interviews, cheer him on like he was a baby bird trying to fly. It wasn't jealousy, not at first, it was exhaustion. Every time Robert reached for her, she was already occupied. Every time he tried to plan something special, Daniel had a crisis. His internet broke, his laptop crashed, he fainted from stress, and Margaret always showed up. "He needs help," she said. "It's not a big deal." "But I'm your boyfriend," Robert once told her. "Don't I get first priority?" She laughed it off. "You're not a client, you're family. You don't need to fight for attention." But he did, and slowly, quietly, he started to lose. He stopped reaching out, stopped making plans. When they had dinner, Margaret was often half present, answering Daniel's messages under the table, reviewing mock tests he'd sent over. And Robert, once the orphan who clung to the promise of not being alone, felt lonelier than ever. He began staying later at his internship, accepting weekend projects, doing extra shifts, anything to stay away from the silence. The distance between them grew like fog, thick, unspoken, heavy, and Margaret never noticed, not when he began sleeping in his own apartment instead of hers. Not when he stopped calling goodnight, not even when he started sending out applications to jobs in cities far away. Daniel, on the other hand, noticed everything. "You've been working really late these days," he said once, watching Robert from across a coffee shop table as Margaret typed away on her laptop. "Yeah. She worries about you, you know. Talks about you a lot." Robert looked up. "Does she?" Daniel smiled faintly. "She said you're different now. Colder." Robert didn't respond. The next morning, Margaret was gone when he woke up. Left a note, "Daniel's presentation got moved up, he's freaking out, went to help him prep." There was no mention of Robert's interview later that day, no good luck, no breakfast in the fridge, just absence. He sat on the couch for a long time, holding the cold coffee she'd brewed before leaving, then picked up the pen she'd given him 3 years ago. It cracked under the pressure of his grip. Like everything else, Robert didn't even want to be at the cafe that day, but David insisted. "You've been dodging people for weeks," his best friend said. "At least grab a decent coffee, you're starting to look like you sleep in Excel sheets." He hadn't expected to find them there, Margaret and Daniel, sitting across from each other by the window. Her laptop was open, notes strewn across the table. Daniel's voice was soft, uncertain, the same helpless tone he always used when Margaret was near. But it wasn't the scene that stopped Robert cold, it was the watch. Sitting on Daniel's wrist, silver face, deep blue dial, the exact limited edition timepiece Robert had given Margaret for her last birthday, a model he'd ordered months in advance after she casually mentioned it during a conversation about classic design. He stood there, the air tightening around him. Margaret looked up. Her eyes flickered in surprise, but not guilt. Just irritation. Robert. Daniel followed her gaze, then smiled politely. Hey. Robert didn't return the greeting. Nice watch. Daniel blinked. Oh, Margaret lent it to me. Said it might bring luck for the interview. Margaret set down her pen. He was nervous. You know how important this opportunity is to him. That's the one I gave you. I didn't think you'd mind, she replied. You never wear watches. That's not the point. She crossed her arms. Then what is? Daniel stood slowly, brows knitting. Robert, if this is about the watch, I'll give it back right now. I didn't want to mess up. This firm. It's the one I've dreamed of since undergrad. I'm sorry if it upset you, really. His voice broke at the end, a perfect falter. Robert felt the heat rising behind his ears. And how many nights did you spend rehearsing with her this time? Daniel looked down. Only a few. 3, actually, Margaret corrected, and only because his MOK presentations were a mess. Robert stared at her. You spent 3 nights helping him, but when I asked you to come to my strategy showcase last week, you said you were busy. I was, she said sharply. His apartment flooded, the pipe burst and everything was underwater. He was panicking. What was I supposed to do? Ignore that? Robert's voice dropped. I waited 2 hours. I stood by that stupid projector, thinking maybe you'd walk in late, thinking maybe you'd pick me. Daniel stepped forward quickly. Please don't blame her. It wasn't her fault. Of course you'd say that. Robert's tone turned razor thin. You always need saving, don't you? Always sick, always panicked, always on the verge of collapse. Daniel flinched. Robert, Margaret said, warning in her voice. And every time, Robert continued, you're right there to catch him. You drop everything. Even when I'm drowning, you don't see me. Daniel's lips trembled. His eyes turned glassy. I'm not trying to get between you two. I respect your relationship. I don't have anyone else to turn to. A tear slipped down his cheek. I never meant to be a problem. Robert almost laughed. You always cry when you get cornered, like clockwork. Margaret stood up. Enough. Why are you defending him? Robert asked. Why does he get grace and I get judgment? Because you're being cruel, she snapped. He's trying his best. He didn't do anything wrong. And I did? You're making a scene. I'm reacting to a scene. I'm done with this, she said, collecting her things. Robert stepped back. The cafe had gone quiet. Daniel stood with his head bowed, tears falling onto his folder. Margaret gently put a hand on his back. Don't listen to him. Of course she didn't even look at Robert. Of course she didn't say his name. He walked out, no coat, no goodbye, just straight into the wind. Outside, the sky was pale and colorless. The cold sunk straight through his shirt. He didn't care. He opened his phone, scrolled to her name. There was a photo of them together, once. She had taken it, laughing, arms around him, messy hair and all. He replaced it with a blank screen, then opened settings, block. It didn't ask twice, and when the name vanished, he expected it to sting. But it didn't, just silence. That night, he arrived home late. His uncle was watching the news, slippers kicked off, a bowl of dumplings going cold on the table. You look terrible, he muttered. Didn't sleep much. Robert slid into the chair and picked up the bowl. The heat stung his hands. He hadn't realized they were that cold. His uncle eyed him. Were you crying? No. He took a bite. The broth burned going down. Your eyes are swollen. I pressed on them, Robert said quietly. Fell asleep like that. His uncle didn't push, just nodded. You've been burning the candle at both ends. You should rest. Robert finished the dumpling. Then, without lifting his eyes, he said, I'm going to North City. I signed the contract yesterday. His uncle paused the television. You're sure? Yes. She doesn't know? No. Are you going to tell her? Robert didn't answer. His uncle exhaled deeply, then gave him a single pat on the back. You'll do fine, son. She won't know what she lost, but she'll feel it. Robert nodded. Just once. The club lights were dim, throbbing low with bass, but the laughter near the VIP booths was unmistakable. Robert hadn't wanted to come, not really, but David had insisted. It's just a graduation thing, his best friend had said. Grab a drink, see familiar faces, smile once, then leave. Easy. Robert stood by the bar, nursing a soda, eyes scanning the crowd. He recognized almost everyone, faces from university, professors' assistants, startup interns, the occasional overconfident founder. But then he heard her. Margaret's voice, light as ever, floated through the music. "Yeah, I got blocked, can you believe it?" Someone laughed. "By who?" "Who else?" she said, mock dramatic. "My other half, almighty Robert." The girls with her gasped in amusement. "What did you do this time?" "Helped someone with a resume, apparently." "Again?" Margaret sipped from her glass. "He's always been dramatic. I let him be." Another wave of laughter. Someone muttered, "Still can't believe he's the one who left you. Thought it'd be the other way around." "I spoiled him too much," Margaret said, with a wink. "That's on me." Robert turned away before the rest of the sentence could land. He made his way toward the private room where David was waiting, the beat of the music pounding in his chest now for all the wrong reasons. A few drinks sat on the table already. "Grab that tray, will you?" David called out. "I asked for Black Label." Robert picked up the nearest bottle and froze. It wasn't Black Label, it was Jack Daniel's. He knew the bottle well, knew it because the last time he drank even a sip of it, his throat had nearly closed shut. He turned just in time to see Daniel stepping into the room, apron on, looking sheepish. "Sorry," he said. "There's a mix-up with the orders tonight. The bar's overwhelmed. I thought I grabbed the right bottle." David looked at the label. "Sir, Isley, everyone knows Robert's allergic to this. I'll change it right now." Robert narrowed his eyes. "And what if I hadn't checked?" "I'm sorry, I really am," Daniel said, hands up. "There's so many people tonight, it's hard to keep track." Robert's voice dropped. "Then don't take jobs where a mistake like this could put someone in the ER." Daniel flinched. It was just an accident. Margaret had appeared behind him, one arm resting lightly on the doorframe. "Don't overreact, Robert, he didn't do it on purpose." Robert's head turned sharply. "Don't overreact?" She stepped closer. "Look at him, he's clearly upset. He's working part-time to cover his rent and tuition. This isn't worth a scene." "He brought me a drink that could send me into anaphylactic shock," Robert said through gritted teeth. Margaret crossed her arms. "You didn't drink it. No harm done." Robert stared at her, stunned. "You're seriously defending him again?" Daniel's voice cracked. "I just wanted to help. I didn't mean anything by it." And there it was, the tremble, the eyes, the tears. He'd perfected it, like he practiced it, always playing the helpless one, always leaning into the sympathy. Robert felt the fury rise in his throat, not just from tonight, but from years of moments like this. "The night before my thesis defense," he said, voice cold, "he had a fever. You left my apartment and sat at his bedside all night." Margaret's face twitched. Robert kept going. "You canceled our anniversary dinner last year because he forgot his presentation slides and you ran across town to help. You missed my startup pitch because he said his internet was down and he was having a breakdown." The room had gone still. "He has you on speed dial every time he's in trouble, and you just answer, like clockwork." Daniel looked at the ground. Robert turned to Margaret. "Do you know what it's like to constantly be put second to someone who isn't even pretending to hide how dependent he is on you?" Margaret's voice cracked slightly. "He doesn't have anyone else. And I don't have you." That stopped her. Robert stepped back, shoulders shaking. "I've been bleeding out emotionally, and you call it dramatic. He tears up, and you call it sensitive. I make one accusation, and I'm the monster. But he shows up with a bottle that could have killed me, and you say it's fine because he's tired?" Daniel whispered, "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing," Robert snapped. "Stop playing the victim in a story you wrote." David tried to step in. "Rob?" But Robert held up a hand. "I'm done." He grabbed his coat. As he turned to go, Daniel muttered, "You rich kids don't get it." Robert stopped, looked over his shoulder. "You're right. I don't get what it's like to always need saving. I only know what it's like to give everything, and still be the bad guy." He pushed the door open and left the room behind. Outside, the cold hit his skin again like punishment. He walked fast, head down, air burning in his lungs. All around him, the city pulsed with life. But he felt nothing. He kept walking, through the lights, through the noise, through the ache, and in that silence, memories returned. Margaret standing in the rain, holding up an umbrella for him after his parents' funeral. Margaret throwing a rock at the boy who called him a curse. Margaret running across the field, screaming his name after he twisted his ankle. She had always come running. Until one day, she didn't. He remembered the first time he realized it. His old apartment had no hot water. He was sick, sweating in bed, barely able to move. He'd called her. She hadn't answered. Later, she texted. Daniel's having a meltdown. We'll come by tomorrow, you'll be okay, right? That was the first night he started looking at job offers out of town. He knew even then, he just didn't want to believe it. Now, there was nothing left to believe in, only the truth. She didn't choose him anymore, and he had finally stopped hoping she would. The Liu family banquet was always held the same way, long tables dressed in ivory linen, red silk lanterns swaying above polished wood beams, and chatter humming like warm static beneath a ceiling of chandeliers. Robert hadn't missed one in nearly 10 years. He usually arrived with Margaret, sat beside her, passed her the dishes he knew she liked, refilled her tea before she even asked. But tonight, he walked in alone, and when the butler gestured toward the usual spot at the main table, beside her, Robert simply offered a polite nod and walked the opposite way. Daniel had already slipped into the seat beside Margaret. He didn't look unsure. In fact, he looked right at home. When Robert returned from paying respects to the elders, he took a seat on the far end of the table, next to Margaret's cousin and a visiting executive. He didn't glance at her, not once. And yet, when he leaned down to serve himself soup, her perfume hit him. She had moved. He straightened, glanced to his left, and there she was. Sitting beside him like nothing had changed, like she hadn't told a room full of people he was dramatic, like she hadn't defended a man who nearly killed him, like she still belonged at his side. "Hey," she said lightly, as if it were just another Tuesday night. "Long time no see." Robert gave a small nod. "Margaret. You've been quiet." "I've been busy." Her lips curled into a knowing smirk. "How long are we doing this silent treatment this time?" He didn't answer. Just then, Master Liu raised his glass. "Let us congratulate Daniel. He just got an offer from Oryx Investment Group, toughest final round I've seen. Margaret helped polish his resume and run his mock interviews, of course." Applause rippled down the table. Daniel smiled sheepishly and bowed his head. "Thank you, I couldn't have done it without Margaret. She practically taught me how to negotiate." "Modest boy," laughed old Madame Liu. "One day, we'll see the two of you running your own firm, maybe together, eh?" Margaret opened her mouth to reply, but Robert's voice cut through the air, calm and low. "I accepted a position with Meridian Securities." The table went quiet. Margaret blinked. "Meridian? That's based in North City." Someone dropped a chopstick. Old Master Liu leaned forward. "Meridian? That's top tier. You never told us, Robert." "I asked the professor not to spread the news until everything was finalized," Robert said, folding his napkin neatly. "My uncle and I signed the papers last week." Margaret's hands tightened on her glass. "But you told me you were staying here. You said you wanted to work near family." "That was before." "Before what?" "Before I realized some families only want you around when it's convenient." She stared at him, the weight of his meaning clear. Still, she tried to keep her smile in place. "Well, congratulations, that's a big step." Later, after dessert had been served and the guests thinned out, Margaret followed him into the vine-covered garden that wrapped behind the banquet hall. The lanterns out here were dimmer, the laughter distant. "You really accepted that offer?" she asked. "Yes." "You're leaving?" "Yes." "Without telling me?" "I just did." She stepped in front of him. "Stop this." He looked at her, patient and unmoved. "Stop what?" "This little tantrum. I know you're mad about the party, and about Daniel, but we've been through worse. You always calm down eventually." "That's your problem," Robert said, stepping past her. "You think I'm just going to reset every time you tug my sleeve." "I've known you since you were 7, she called after him. "You don't do silence well, you hate being alone." He stopped, turned. "You're right, I used to." She walked up to him slowly, her voice dropped. "Remember when you were 17 and failed your calculus exam? You wouldn't talk to anyone, locked yourself in your room for 2 days. You crawled in through the window," he said. "Exactly," she whispered. Because I knew you'd never say what you needed. I just showed up, and you didn't push me away then." He looked down at her hand, which was reaching for his arm, but he didn't move to meet it. "I failed one exam," he said. "But you failed me 100 times, and you never noticed." "I didn't mean to." "I know," he cut in. "That's what makes it worse." She pulled back slightly, eyes searching. "You're really going, aren't you?" "Yes." "You'll come back, you always do." "This time I won't." "Don't say that." "I've said it to myself 100 times, this is the first time I believe it." Margaret stood still, her breath visible in the cool air. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "Everything I did for Daniel was just helping. And everything I did for you was called love." She blinked. He smiled faintly. "But it wasn't mutual, was it?" She shook her head, stepping back like he'd slapped her. "You know I loved you. Not enough to choose me." He turned and walked away. She didn't follow this time, and that was when he knew he really was leaving. The wind in North City carried a different kind of bite. It didn't sting the skin the way South City's coastal breeze did. It cut clean, sharp, bracing. Robert liked that. It kept him awake, focused, alive. Penguin Securities towered into the morning sky like a blade of glass. Inside, everything was steel, polished wood, and restrained elegance, and Robert, now weeks into his new life, fit right in. That morning, he had just finished briefing a senior team on asset valuation. He stepped out of the conference room, eyes scanning his phone for a message from Melissa about their next client call. Instead, he saw a figure in the lobby, hair tangled, eyes bloodshot, coat wrinkled at the sleeves like she'd been sleeping in it. Margaret. He didn't move, just watched her from the mezzanine level until one of his colleagues asked, "Friend of yours?" Robert straightened his tie. "No, just someone from the past." Then he walked down. She rushed to meet him, her fingers clenched around the strap of a worn purse. "Robert, thank God, I've been trying to find you. Your number changed, your socials wiped. Why did you disappear like that?" He didn't answer. "I need to talk to you, please." He gestured toward a tea shop across the street. 10 minutes. Inside, she sat across from him in silence for nearly half of that time, eyes scanning him like she couldn't believe he was real, or maybe that he'd actually changed. "You look thinner," she murmured. Robert stirred his tea. "Working harder." Margaret laughed once, sharp and brittle. "You blocked me. You didn't just walk away, you vanished." "I had to." "Why?" He didn't flinch. "Because I almost died." She froze. "What are you talking about?" "You remember the night before the final round of Daniel's Tower interview?" She blinked, thinking. "Yeah, I stayed up with him doing mock QA." Robert met her eyes. "I ordered takeout, didn't check the ingredients, had crab roe in it." Her face paled. "I went into full allergic shock, couldn't breathe, hands started trembling, vision blurred. I called you 14 times. She shook her head slowly. "You didn't answer, because you had your phone on silent, for him." Margaret opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I called 911 myself," Robert continued, voice calm, distant. "They found me collapsed on the floor, my throat almost closed entirely. They said another 10 minutes and I might not have made it. No. When they lifted me into the ambulance, I looked up at your apartment window." He gave a dry laugh. "The lights were on in your study. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd see the sirens, come out, ask what happened." Her hands clutched the edge of the table. "You didn't." "I didn't know." "You didn't care to know." Tears spilled from her eyes. "Robert, I swear, I didn't know it was that bad." "That's the thing, Margaret." His voice dropped. "You didn't know. You didn't ask, you didn't even notice I hadn't texted you the next morning, you assumed I was sulking. Meanwhile, I was in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and panic eating me alive. I didn't mean for—" "I know," he cut her off. "You never mean for anything, you just do it anyway." She looked like she'd been slapped. "I used to be your priority," Robert said softly. "The moment anything went wrong, you'd run, you never asked questions, you just showed up." A flash in her eyes. "I was 17, he said. I'd failed an exam, locked myself in for 2 days. You climbed the tree outside my window and threw a sandwich through the opening. You didn't leave until I ate." Her lips parted, trembling, But this time, he whispered, I was dying, and you didn't even see it. Margaret sobbed, one hand covering her mouth. I thought you were strong. You always were. You didn't need me like Daniel did. No, Robert said. I needed you in silence, that's the difference. She shook her head violently. No, I was stupid, I made a mistake, but I never stopped loving you. You didn't love me, Robert said. You loved the version of me that waited, the version that came back, the one who forgave you. She reached across the table, desperate. I'm here now, I'm trying. Please, let's just go back to how we were. I'll cut him off, I'll prove it, I swear. But he didn't flinch, he pulled his arm back slowly. You got used to me always coming back, he said coldly. That ends now. She broke. Right there in the booth of that tea shop, the woman who used to hold his world together collapsed into herself. 18 years, Robert, 18 years, you can't just throw that away. I'm not. He stood, buttoning his coat. I'm finally letting it go. She looked up through her tears. What do I do now? He paused, hand on the chair. You learn how to live without me. And then he walked out, leaving her behind in the soft golden light spilling through the shop window. The first time Margaret showed up outside Penguin Securities, she brought coffee, iced Americano, double shot, no sugar, just the way Robert used to like it. She sat quietly on the bench across the glass lobby, waiting. He didn't come down. The next day, it was a paper bag with egg sandwiches from the little place he liked 3 blocks down. Still nothing. A week later, it was an umbrella. It rained that morning, steady and cold, and she stood by the revolving door with 2 umbrellas in hand, watching for him. He walked past her without breaking stride. She started leaving post-it notes at the cafe across the street. Hope your meeting went well today. Don't forget to rest, you never sleep enough, I'm still here. But Robert never replied. Inside those glass walls, he thrived. His name appeared on 3 successful portfolios in under 6 months. Senior partners requested him by name. His ideas became part of the firm's long-term playbook. And then came Melissa. She wasn't loud, or dramatic, or radiant like Margaret. She was deliberate, calm, thoughtful. She didn't chatter, she listened. And when Robert spoke, she didn't cut him off, didn't check her phone, didn't glance toward another screen. They played tennis on weekends, debated markets over ramen, shared quiet silence in the rooftop garden without needing to fill the air. Margaret saw them once, by accident. She'd been across the street, trying to build the courage to walk inside, when Melissa walked out of the building beside Robert, laughing at something he'd said. Robert reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Melissa's eyes. She leaned in without hesitation. That night, Margaret went home and tore every photo from the scrapbook they'd started when they were 16. Soon after, Robert's uncle called. She's not well, she hasn't eaten in days, her family's worried. I know, Robert replied. Her father begged me to call you. She's quit her job, stays in her room, keeps looking at your old notes, she's unraveling. There was a pause. Do you want me to come back? Robert asked. You already know the answer. He flew in the next morning. The Liu estate was eerily quiet when he arrived. The maid at the door looked startled, almost relieved. She's upstairs, been refusing to speak to anyone all week. Mr. Ito's son, Daniel, is the only one she lets in. That was enough. Robert climbed the stairs 2 at a time. He found them in her room. Daniel was sitting on the edge of her bed, holding a tray with a bowl of steaming porridge. She hasn't eaten all day, he said when Robert entered. I've been trying to. Get out. Daniel blinked. Robert, come on, this isn't the time to. I said get out. Margaret stirred under the covers, eyes red and sunken. When she saw him, her lips parted in disbelief. You came. Robert stepped forward. He looked at the tray, then at Daniel. That porridge, where'd you get the recipe? Daniel hesitated. I found it in the kitchen notes. Robert shook his head. No, you didn't. That recipe doesn't exist in any book, not in any folder. I made it. From scratch. For her. Daniel froze. I spent 2 summers perfecting it. Her stomach can't handle heavy grains. I researched ingredients, tested different rice blends, even consulted a nutritionist behind her back. I made every batch myself. When we moved out for grad school, I used to freeze small containers for her, labeled by week. He turned to Margaret. You told him it was your grandma's recipe? She looked down, ashamed. I didn't want him to think you still. Robert pulled something from his coat. A black velvet box. He opened it and revealed the engraved pen she'd given back months ago. Only now, it was polished. Restored. Margaret's eyes widened. You kept it. He unscrewed the cap and revealed the inscription inside. She gasped. Etched in tiny cursive, hidden along the inner rim of the barrel were lines only visible in direct light. To Margaret, when you're too tired to speak, I'll write the words for you. When you forget your worth, I'll remind you. This pen isn't a gift, it's a promise. Her breath broke. There's more, he said, turning the pen slightly. I carved a line for every year we were together. Birthday notes, inside jokes, plans, promises. He set the pen on her nightstand. Margaret broke. I didn't know. I never looked. I know. I didn't mean to forget. But you did. Silence stretched between them. Daniel stood in the corner, his presence now awkward and unnecessary. Margaret turned to him. Daniel, leave us. But. Please. Daniel left, quiet and defeated. Robert took out a folded sheet of paper. I wrote down the porridge recipe, step by step. I even noted where to buy the ingredients locally. She took it with trembling hands. Why are you giving me this? One last thing to remember me by. Her eyes welled up again. Robert, I don't want this to be the end. It already is. You said you'd always be there for me. I was. Then don't go. I have to. He looked out the window. I got an offer, London, cross-border advisory team. I leave next week. Margaret's face crumpled. Can I visit? She whispered. He shook his head gently. It's too far, for both of us. She sobbed, shoulders collapsing inward. I can change. I'll prove it. Just don't walk away, not this time. Robert leaned forward, pressed a kiss to her forehead. You'll survive. You always have. He stood. Margaret clutched the recipe paper to her chest, the pen in her other hand. He walked to the door, paused. Do you remember when we were 12? He asked, voice say. Often now. You asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. She nodded through tears. I said I wanted to see the whole world. You said, take me with you. Outside, the sun was rising through the clouds. Golden light poured through the window, casting everything in soft fire. I'm finally going, Robert said. And this time, I'm going alone. He closed the door behind him. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. The sunrise awaited, and this time it was only for him.